My name is Julie Turney, and this is the HR Sound Off podcast show, the show created for HR and business professionals to discuss pertinent topics and trends as it relates to our professions. We're going to have amazing conversations with HR professionals from all over the world, get to learn their origin stories. How did they get into this profession? What do they love about being here? And how they want to set the record straight on that one misconception that really drives them crazy about our profession. Are you ready? I'm ready. Then let's sound off. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the HR Sound Off podcast show. My name is Julie Turney, and I am your host. Today, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to two amazing authors, two amazing women who have created this great space that I'm going to share with you today. So I want to say welcome to Debbie Cohen and Kate. Is it Zummer?
Yes, Kate Roeske-Zummer. Yep.
Okay, got it. Welcome, ladies. It's so great to have you. How are you doing today?
Good. Yeah, very well. Thank you.
Wonderful. So the first question that I usually ask just to get things going is, let's tell our audience a little bit about who you are. So Debbie, do you want to go first and then Kate?
Sure. Let's see. That's a great question. Who am I? I think I'm a human potential junkie. I started my career in early childhood education, moved into administration, was part of the early movement of the work-life era, and then moved into HR. And I spent the last 25 years of my career as the chief people officer, CHRO, in several different organizations, multinational, like 96,000 people around the world, and early stage 8-people startups.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of retired, and Kate's like, hey, come join me as a thought partner. And we ended up creating a book and forming a company, and here we are.
Yeah, we're going to talk about your book, your company a little bit later, but Kate, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. I started out in advertising, which is also a little bit about like the human beings and what motivates people, what doesn't motivate people. And so that really began my journey of like, people are so interesting. And then I got burnt out in advertising.
Yeah.
And this was back in 2001. And I was living in New York, and I was like, man, I'm sort of done having the same conversation that you have in that industry, right? Your creatives want it to be more creative. Your account people want it to be more functional. And I'm like, if it's too functional, it's going to be boring. And if it's too creative, they're not going to know what you're advertising. I got tired of having that argument. And so I hired a coach, my very first coach. And I was like, oh my God, I think I would be really good at this. And then I was like, not really. And and then I finally decided, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I am gonna do this. And so I became coach. And when I started to learn, this was back in 2003 when I finally actually did the coach training. And people would be like, so you're a coach, and you don't know this because I'm on video, but I'm tall. And people would be like, basketball? Now we forget that it's in our everyday vernacular. We forget now, but back then it was like, and I was like, let me tell you a little, let me show you what this is all about. This is about coaching you into being who you want to be, right? Not about who we think we should be or what other people think we should be and all of that kind of stuff. So that started my journey back in 2003. And very early on, I thought, oh my God, these skills are coaching skills, but they will help people navigate the complexities of being human in organizations.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Kate.
Yeah.
I want to take some time to just talk about your company and your book. So you guys got together and you wrote a book. You have a company. Tell us a little bit about your book, how these things came to being. Like, why did you decide to write this book? Why did you decide to create this company? What is the book called? Let's go from there. You want to start, Debbie, or do you want to start Kate? Kate's turned red.
I'd like to go first. She's like ready to go.
Go for it, Kate.
It's so funny. No, we definitely have told this story before, So Debbie was one of my clients back in 2010, I think.
Okay.
Right. So we've been working together really since 2010. So it's 11 years now. And she was, and my previous business partner, Athena, and I brought, like this idea, an idea forward in terms of this is what we think managers, leadership looks like. And Debbie was like, ooh, let's go there, right? And
I wanted to create something different. I didn't want off the shelf. I wanted
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And the three of us kind of really, in spite of ourselves and because of who we were, honestly, created a program that people absolutely loved. And I did that work across a lot of different organizations. And so it's one of those things where I was like, I've been doing that for 10 years, 10 years, 9 years, I guess, at the time we started the book.
Right.
And I was like, it's time to like put this in a book, to make this available. Like this works.
Yeah.
So let's get it out there.
Yeah. And I was like, there's no way in hell I'm writing a book. Like, I don't want to do that. It just sounds like the worst possible thing. And part of the reason I got to yes was Kate was pretty compelling. And it's the foundational piece, right? If you want to fundamentally change the world, you need a whole tribe. And you've got to get the word out in a broader, consumable way. And I think we did a really good job in the book. And Kate can talk about that.
Yeah.
So,
the book is called
Resistance was very much a part of our. It's so funny because I'm doing a little piece in another area of our work. I'm doing something on resistance, and it is just a part of life. And it was a part of this process.
Yeah.
First initially with Debbie, and then we brought somebody else in to sort of, the Barlow initiatives to sort of help us with this. And we'd have to push against certain ideas. No, we resisted that. And then be like, okay, maybe that, but no, not that. And, and so it's an interesting process to go through.
Definitely.
To help the listeners, the book is called Humanity Works Better.
Yes.
5 practices to lead with awareness, choice, and the courage to change, which is really secret sauce. Our company is called Humanity Works.
Yeah.
And it really is about, a need Kate and I saw doing the work together for a decade. Being inside companies for multiple decades, really watching how much process reengineering, efficiency had just squeezed the lifeblood out of the humans doing the work.
Yeah.
And that so much of the roadblocks to productivity were about how people were working with one another. The skills to be good humans with each other when they were doing the work. So much of the focus was on the doing. And part of what we do at Humanity Works is focus on how to be with one another in those messy, hard moments.
Yeah.
To proactively, set yourself up in meaningful relationships so you can navigate through the evolutions that happen as human beings inside companies. With so much we can't control. Our message is really about the only thing you can really control is yourself. And so
and that's what the book is written to empower you, whoever you are that is reading that book. Because I think there's one of those things that happens in the workplace, right? Like we deflect, we think we're not empowered. We think we're going to get into trouble, or the organization isn't going to like it, or our boss is going to be whatever, what I mean?
We have to wait for the top of the house to do it. And trust me, having sat in those rooms, that's not what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And so that resistance Kate was talking about, the marketing team was like, it's going to sit as a leadership book. And I'm like, the leader in you. And they're like, it needs to sit on the leadership book. And I'm like, they won't pick it up. Right. And they're like, yes, they will. Yes, they will. It's written for them. Yeah. They'll pick it up. Right.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it really comes, this came from therapy, quite frankly, is the only thing you can control is you.
Yep.
It's the only thing, you don't like what's going on in a situation, then you have to say, hey, I'm really uncomfortable with what's going on right now. Yeah. Right. But we tend to not empower ourselves to think that my voice matters, or that people
have a right to say something.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
And Julie, back sort of to the audience here. I'm sorry, we're probably blowing right past your question.
No, you're doing just fine.
If the audience here is predominantly HR folks, I think a great place to pause and look is how much is in place in your organization that constricts that you, because we're like, oh, geez, if we unleash all these people to, breathe the voice, what are we going to do with all of that? Right.
Yeah.
So much of what I saw when I entered into the field, and I entered into it not as a noble profession, but because I wanted to fundamentally change it to be a high valued part of all organizations, was to question what is in place that's actually holding this organization back, not creating value. And, we were working with a company yesterday on a keynote, and they basically asked us to talk about unleashing authenticity, but that authenticity does not mean you get to be an asshole.
Exactly.
There are
like how people use radical candor as an excuse. Poor Kim Scott.
Yes, right. That's not what she intends.
No, at all.
Right? But we picked the piece because we loved it. There's something about that feeds the human need, and that's part of what we address in our programs. Is where is that coming from within you? Yeah, and where is that deficit actually causing you to show up this way? And so I think inside our profession, a really great question is, how do we send a message that changes within your control and feel like we have some control over what will happen here? And that's where Kate's infamous work on boundaries with companies really comes forward.
Yes. I think sometimes people are not aware, and I guess it comes back to that ability to feel empowered, that they have the power to create their own boundaries.
Yes.
So many times when I'm coaching HR professionals, and I get that question of like, well, my managers want this, and this, and I'm like, and I don't know how to create boundaries, and I'm like, you don't? Last time I checked, you have a mouth, right? You have a brain, you know how to use those things, right?
Yeah.
I really love that, Julie.
And just think about the words you use to empower yourself, right?
Yeah. We talk about freedom without a framework is chaos, right? And so what are those boundaries? And the place for HR leaders to look is, and why is that important? Give the people the why of those boundaries and the freedom to move inside them, and they will. And they'll show you.
One of the things that we write about this in the book, which is, boundaries are there to let people in, not to keep them out. Correct. To that point that Debbie just talked about, if people know where the sides of the box are and they're allowed to move around inside it, so much creativity can happen within that, and people can kind of relax into it. Not unlike, raising kids.
Right. There's a great piece of research that shows kids playing on a playground in the absence of a fence play very close and tight together. But when a fence was put up, they played to the full breadth of the space. And the same thing happens. People need to know where the edges are. Correct. It's why unlimited PTO has not worked. They need to know where the edges are so that they know how to play fully inside. So if you want your people to play big, create big boundaries for them. But to where I think, Julie, you were pointing, you have to know why it's important and how it helps move the organization and your people culture forward. That's our responsibility to give voice to.
I gotta tell you, ladies, that I'm so glad that we're finally having this conversation. But when you first told me the title of the book, there was something that just made me feel like this was soothing honey. Like just the title alone, like giving people permission to be themselves, understand the frameworks in which they work in and how they can have successful relationships, whether that's at work or in their lives in general. Was that the full intention of this, right?
That's what we've seen in the work that we've been doing for the last decade. I mean, if we haven't been told once, we've been told 100 times, oh my God, this work is great. And it's really helped me at my job, but it's also really helped me at home in me being the kind of person I want to be.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's one of those barriers that we wanted to blow out of the water too. Who you are, we have a friend, we have lots of phrases, how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? Like, it's not like you're some different person at work than you are at home.
Exactly.
You're the same human being in both places,
We use the leadership circle profile is our 360 tools for leaders. And so often when we're debriefing them, they're like, oh, if I brought that part of me into work, like that wouldn't be good. Like, let's first play with the assumption you're not bringing that piece in, because it's probably leaking out in ways that you don't think. Two, what's the energetic cost to you to not show up fully? And what is that you're so afraid of that, if you brought that in back to full expression and taking responsibility, which is part of, the narrative in the book, of the impact that you're creating.
Yeah.
As opposed to just thinking you can just be whoever you are. Yes. And right, you create an impact. And if that impact isn't what you're wanting, then you have to take responsibility for it. Well, you need to take responsibility for it when it is what you want.
When it is exactly what you want.
But so many people default through that. We're into the doing. And again, part of famous Kate Roeske-Zummer quote, slow this down. And let's take a look at what are you really wanting to have happen here, and use that intention to create what you want.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much. Tell our beautiful people, I'm sure your book is available on Amazon, but is it available anywhere else for people to purchase?
Yeah, it's at most major bookstores. I think it's at Barnes and Noble and Target and all of that kind of stuff. And Walmart. And
from our website, www.humanityworks.com, there's a link that also, if people are wanting to purchase in indie bookstores and things like that.
Nice.
Also, people want to bring it in. We're doing a fair number of speaking engagements inside companies, and if people want to buy it for their folks, we can help with bulk discounts.
Nice. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So you've heard it here. We will return to my interview in a moment, but first, a word from our sponsors, AbilitiCBT. AbilitiCBT is an internet-based cognitive behavioral therapy program designed to provide effective mental health care to people dealing with a variety of concerns, including anxiety, depression, trauma and grief, and more. The program is guided by experienced therapists who are there to help you understand and navigate your mental health concerns and build long-lasting coping skills. Accessible from any device at any time, AbilitiCBT is delivered through a secure digital platform to combine the benefits of in-person therapy with the convenience of virtual access to fast, easy, and effective support. AbilitiCBT offers a targeted program to help address mental health concerns related to the uniquely challenging aspects of pandemics, including uncertainty, isolation, burnout, caring for family and community members, information overload, and stress management. AbilitiCBT can be accessed online at myicbt.com or by downloading the AbilitiCBT app from the Google Play or App Store. You deserve to feel better. We now return to our interview. Okay, so let me ask you, what are you reading, watching, listening to right now that you think our audience would enjoy? Debbie?
Well, the one I'm listening to, because I'm a big audiobook fan, but then I became so enraptured by it, I had to get it because I want to do with it what I hope people do with our book. It's called Subtract.
Ooh.
And what I'm so enjoying about this book, and actually a client of ours, a coaching client of Kate's turned us on to it, is it's about how to do less that creates more. And in our world right now, and still back to, my passion for the HR profession, I think additive doesn't actually always mean better.
Mm-hmm.
And in this great reset that we're in, it's the perfect time for us to look at what can we take away that actually gives us more of what we want.
Yeah.
And I think it's a brilliant way for us as we reset coming out of this, for the profession and for people to begin to think about.
Beautiful. Thank you. Kate.
So I have read this book. This is an earmarked book for me or whatever. I'm a big fan of Chip Conley. He's actually a personal friend of mine, and it's called Peak: How Great Companies Get Their Mojo from Maslow. And part of what I think is really interesting about it is, and this is a guy who started a hotel business, and he said, literally, most of the people that work for me clean toilets. And how do I create meaning for that? How can I actually help them to sort of figure out, what is meaningful, what is transformational when people are doing something like that? And it's just a very cool idea and book, and that hierarchy of needs that we all know about. And it's actually part of the reason we all go to work to begin with. And so there's just some great ideas in there. So I would recommend that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing those. I'll include them in the comments. The big question: what's the biggest misconception about HR that really bothers you that you want to set the record straight on right here, right now, today, Debbie?
Oh boy, this is going to be a whole book of mine at some point. So maybe it's more of a pet peeve than a misconception. Can I do that? And
yep,
maybe
sure.
So often when I'm helping companies hire top of the house, one of the questions I always ask is, the entire executive team is down the hall, real life scenario, working on the strategic plan. Why do you deserve to be in that room? And 99.9% of the time, the answer is because I have to execute on what they decide. And I'm going to tell you that's not the reason. That's not the reason you're in that room. And you need to figure out why you're in that room and claim it. Because there is a need for HR to be in that room and at that table. We fought for years to be at those tables, and we have to earn the right to stay there.
Absolutely.
I'm in the middle of, we're in the middle of writing an article. I've got a little bee in my bonnet about what I think is going on right now in our culture with the great resignation, the great reset. Definitely. I think the tides are starting to turn, and that our employees, we need them. There are fewer of them. We have to fight harder to keep them. And that is shifting. And so I think that the day in the sun for HR is now, and it's emerging, and you need to step up and really start doing that claiming that Debbie is talking about, because I think the tides are shifting.
I love this because it ties right back to the theme of the book, right? If change needs to happen, it starts with you. And when you begin to change how you think about being in relationship with your people, the need for boundaries and clarity, your role in presenting the why, which is part of why you're at the table, and what that looks like for people to give expression and voice inside that framework. That is not how HR has been set up to work in the past, but I think to Kate's point, it is part of the great reset and where we're going, and it's the moment for HR to lead that change.
Definitely. I did a presentation maybe about a year and a half ago, which I dubbed "It's the most wonderful time to be in HR." So it was like right at the maybe just in the throes of COVID. And the reason why I did that talk was just to say to people, like, this is a great time for us as HR professionals to now reset, to now give the C-suite what they need, get the recognition we deserve, be in the spaces that we deserve to be in. But we have to prove that we belong there. We can't just say we belong there because we have to, like, as you said, execute. Why are we really there? What do we understand our purpose truly is? And I think a lot of times when you ask that question, why did you get into HR? And people go, oh, I got thrown into HR. First of all, nothing annoys me more. Because then when I ask you, so who are you? Not a clue. How can you know who you are if you've been thrown into something?
What do you fundamentally believe about people? That's the question.
Is the ultimate question. And that just tied nicely into what I thought about, made me think about the presentation that I did back then, that I'm bringing back to life again for 2022, because I think this is a wonderful time for us to be in the space. The data is showing us that the C-suite recognize our importance. They recognize that we can lead change, that we can go forward and help organizations to be bigger, better, and brighter. But we have to understand who we are. If we don't know who we are, how can we support?
Yeah. Well, who you are, what you believe, and how it ties into the needs of the business.
Yeah.
All those things have to come together.
Yes, Kate.
Our book is also going to help you with what mindset do you have? We're going to give you some skills that you can practice as soon as you've read about them. And then there are these 5 practices. So it's also a how-to. It's not just writing about the platitudes that these things are important. It's like, okay, great. We think they are important, but how do you go about doing them? Yeah. So we hope it's going to be an earmarked, favorite for people to sort of dip back into.
And if people are looking for help, we have programs that we bring in for managers, emerging leaders, and the top of the house. And that could even include the people team, as you're trying to shift your mindsets and think about how to go about doing things differently. And later this quarter, we'll launch, hopefully, our online portal, which will be an easier and more accessible tool for people. Yeah.
Beautiful. So, Thank you.
Yeah. Our job is to fundamentally change the world of work so that there's more humanity at work, and we need all of you to help us do that. So appreciate, Julie, you helping amplify that.
Oh, thank you so much. You're welcome. What advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you know now?
What advice would I give my younger self?
To your younger self. I won't take you back too far, but maybe just at the start of your working career.
I think if I were giving my younger self advice, it would be to be conscious about what's happening. There was a lot of just defaulting into what you thought was what you're supposed to graduate and get a job and have that job. And then for me, it was getting married and I don't know, like having kids. And there was a lot of defaulting into the doing of my life. And it was, I was well into my 40s when I became more conscious of my life. And I think I would have told myself earlier to try to be more conscious of what was happening.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think mine would probably be to give the credit to my intuition. Intuition is a real thing. I think we tend to discount it and not think that it's that real. And yet I think my intuition is responsible for all the smart choices that I made in my life. and so get to know your intuition and listen to it earlier and sooner, and instead of defaulting, as Deb's talking about. But there is something about my intuition that I think it would have been great if I had listened to it earlier on and said, oh, I think it's telling me something kind of important that I should pay attention to.
Like to write a book.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, ladies. With that being said, you've survived your time in the sound booth today. This was a great conversation. I want to thank you so much for reaching out to me on Twitter and finally getting us together so that we could have this conversation. I want to thank you so much. I wish you guys all the best with Humanity Works Better and your organization and all the wonderful work that you're doing. I hope more people engage in your services because it's definitely needed. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for being part of the tribe, Julie. We so appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us in the sound booth today. I hope that you found this information from this episode useful. You can find me on all social media platforms at I am Julie Turney. That's I-am Julie Turney. And you can find this episode or this show on most digital platforms, Google Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, you name it, we're there. Thanks to our sponsors, AbilitiCBT and rock solid entertainment for helping me to put this content together for you. And I will see you again in the next Sound Off.